welcome back, guys. This past Tuesday, we did a blog release, and it was the Filipino Minimalist. Less is more, less is now, written by Rebecca Padua, which we had recently on our season 4 narratives. And today, I'm so fortunate to have her with us today and to just talk stories. And before diving into the blog itself, we're just going to chat a little bit and have a conversation. And to get that started, we're gonna reintroduce ourselves again. And without further ado, my name is Chachi, and I am one of the founders for Claiming Filipinx Identity. And I currently am a recent graduate at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And with me today is
Hello, introducing myself now. Hey, I'm Rebecca. I am, as from who I am a full-time data analyst at a healthcare IT company. On the side, I also manage an Instagram personal finance page called Morning Coffee Money. If you already follow me on there, I go by the name of Jess because when I first started the account, I wanted a little more privacy, but who cares at this point? As for school, I did graduate back in May as a math and theology double major with a minor in economics.
okay. And with that said, my check-in question for us today is, how are you really? Because so much things has happened this past weeks, and it's a really nice question to ask ourselves, and especially to really have the conversation continue. So how are you really, Rebecca?
Yeah, January has definitely been an emotionally and mentally exhausting month. But overall, I've been managing well. Where I'm living right now, we're still in lockdown, so just been living my life away and working from home, pretty much 24/7. But doing the best that I can.
Great. And yes, I agree with you. Like, this past 2021 January, it's really funny how it's almost gonna end. Also, it's next month is going to be February also, and it's like a never-ending roller coaster ride. There's always big events coming, but yeah. So before we get started, the inspiration behind the blog was from the Netflix series The Minimalist, and let's just kind of talk about like our insights and takeaways, especially within the film itself.
Sure. Is that a film that you've already watched, Chachi?
The Minimalist on Netflix?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'll start off by saying that I discovered this minimalist film through one of my all-time favorite YouTubers. His name is Matt Diavella, and he wasn't physically in the film, but he was like the man behind the camera. He was the director of this film, and he is also a minimalist. There are two people featured in the actual film, both of them being Josh and Ryan, and they pretty much, I think it's like a little over an hour. It's not a very long film. They kind of walk us through what they experienced growing up and how those experiences of being poor and being a part of financially challenged families has impacted their adult lives and how they understand money, how they understand what they want in their own lifestyles. And by growing up poor, they always had this idea of, in order to have a normal, nice life, you have to always buy stuff, and you need a big house so that you can fill that big house with as much stuff as possible. So by the time that they were maybe in their late 20s or early 30s, they realized, hey, I'm really exhausted. And everything that I'm doing that I thought was meant to curate this perfect life is not working out. So they discovered minimalism, and since then, they've adopted this practice into their own lives. They consider themselves minimalists, and they pretty much travel across the entire world just preaching about this concept.
Yes, and for me as well, I heard about this film because I just saw it on Netflix, and I was just like, "What is a really great series to watch?" And after I rewatched my favorite series, which is The Good Place, I saw Minimalist, and I was just like, "Oh, I heard about Minimalist before. I heard
Yeah.
a couple people talk about it, and some of like a close friend, we talk about it before, like the idea of um, having less. And when I watched this film as well, I was just like, whoa, it was really mind blowing because they bring up a really good point. Like, why do we focus so much in like accumulating a lot of stuff when all of that things is gonna expire? And it's it's so like mind blowing to say that that's how the world is like working, is that the more you work, the more you buy something to get something out of it, but then in the end we don't really find the value in it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the cycle of like mental health goes around. Like, it really doesn't matter having so much stuff. It's just like that's just what kind of society kind of plays on you. So that's what kind of I took away from the series itself. And it's, for anyone that didn't watch it yet, sorry, not to spoiler alert, but that's pretty much the takeaway of like how the series is.
Yeah. And an even bigger idea that they express a lot in the film is that success is not defined by what other people tell you. Even more so, success is not defined by what you have. Because growing up, I don't know if you experienced this, but like even for myself, I was always under the impression that as long as I have a big house, as long as I always have a brand new car, as long as I have the newest gadgets, whether that be it like a cell phone or a laptop or the nicest furniture, that's what's going to make me successful. But successful is very subjective, and it really depends on your culture, your own outlook of what you define success as. So through, like in the film, Josh and Ryan told themselves like, to me success is being able to live a very low key life and being able to connect with people every day and not having to sit in an office 8, sometimes even 12 hours a day just to make a living.
I think yes, and I think the thing also is that we live in such a digital age, and like one thing they mention is like this term, I forgot what it is, but then it's how like when we're always on our phone, like for example, like if we were to go on like to Google something, and then you go on like a business site, and like, whoa, how did they know that I wanted this? And then you kind of wanted it now, and then there's this term, I don't know if you remember it, but it's just like it's a psychological term that it makes you keep wanting to buy and buy, and it in the end you're just like, why, I don't need.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I also don't remember what the term is, but I've definitely been experiencing that a lot in my life too. As I mentioned earlier, I work from home full time, and lately I've been realizing like I'm not going to be heading back to the office anytime soon. It's probably about time that I get office furniture that will be good for my body and especially for my back, because the desk and the chair I don't have is not ergonomic. I've been thinking this for about an entire month, and during this entire month, I've been getting progressively more and more ads of like standing desks and ergonomic chairs, and it's just crazy. Even on days when I'm not like looking at those things, even if I just talk about it, I suddenly get an ad, whether that be on Hulu on the TV or like on YouTube. It's insane.
It is, and even if you go on TikTok, like you get this like, oh, things you would like feel like it's essential to you, and then you kind of, and it's the marketing aspect of it too.
Yeah.
It's like they really market it really well, but then like,
Oh yeah.
I don't need this. Don't trick me. Like I'm more of a bigger person. Like I can I can survive without having those items.
Yeah, exactly.
and 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 also like to add in that, and like what I and in the, I think halfway in the beginning of the film, they ask this question of like what is essential, and like to you, Rebecca, like what is essential to you or to us?
That's actually a tough question. Well, if we're talking like really, really basic, like three main things, obviously shelter, food, and clothing. But even within those three categories, it's really easy to be buying into things that within those three categories that are non-essential. So, for example, fashion, fast fashion, all like pretty much all we need day to day is like a comfy t-shirt, comfy pants or shorts, underwear. But there's like a bunch of mass advertising and a bunch of influencers on social media that's telling us, hey, in addition to like these 5 t-shirts that you have and like these 3 bras that you also like need this very flamboyant like blouse, and you also need this like super expensive beautiful jeans because that's what's going to make you happy and that's what's going to make you, make you successful. As for like shelter, I live with my partner, my longtime partner, in a 1-bedroom apartment. But because on like Twitter, Instagram, I'm always seeing pictures of people buying like these massive or beautiful brand new houses, I think like, hey, instead of like a 750 square foot 1-bedroom apartment, maybe I actually need like a 3-bedroom apartment because I need an office, I need like a game room, and I need a bedroom. It's like there are so many voices out there telling us what is essential when really it all comes down to those three things. And even between shelter, clothing, and food, all we really need is like the bare minimum. Like what's gonna put clothes on our back, what's gonna keep us safe from like the cold and from rain and whatnot.
Definitely, and I think that's that's really the interesting part about society itself, is like it really does have to go alongside with that. And I know also like cutting it close to the post that you written, one thing also that they brought up is this concept of uh, this living this American dream, especially when it comes to like, especially in our culture itself, that we are known for being so hardworking, like we have to have this working mentality, and then to tie it in with that American dream, quotation mark, is that we are put into society to have this mindset, and I always emphasize it, to continue working to live that American dream. That in like, even like when you see like memes of in the Filipino culture, is that you always see those bags, handbags, shoes,
Yeah.
Anything that we like to name, and then we always trying to fit the mold and to assimilate, like getting these items will make us happy.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with this.
No, it totally makes sense because like if you think about the stereotypical Filipino auntie, you think of like a short older woman in maybe her mid-50s with like hair that's a bit shorter than mine, and she's really dressed up in heels and like holding her Louis Vuitton bag like that. But it's like where did that image even come from, and when did this idea of having to buy designer and looking nice all the time, where did that idea ever come from? And it goes back to like my and trying to fill an image of ourselves that we actually genuinely about. So think about in my life is I mentioned before to you when I was on the podcast that my dad's dad, my grandpa and my grandma moved to the Philippines, moved from the Philippines to Hawaii. They gave they my that's where my dad and my uncles were born in Kalihi, and they did everything in their power to not only build a better life for themselves and especially for their kids, but also try to fulfill that American dream. So my grandpa bought a house. He like they tried to buy my uncles and my dad like as many nice things as they could afford, but up until the point where my grandpa died, there were a lot of financial issues with a lot of the things that they were doing. So for instance, one really popular piece of the American dream is to own a house. One thing that I didn't realize was that my grandpa couldn't really afford that mortgage. So he did this thing called a reverse mortgage, which is not really worth explaining over this live stream. But basically, that kind of just meant that once he died, the house didn't belong to the family anymore. And it makes me think like if my grandpa was aware of like what buying a house meant or what going in debt meant, if like he really understood the nuances of those things, would he have done it in the first place, and would he have tied those like hardships to what it really means to be an American? So the American dream is so detrimental to like how we perceive our own lives and especially to our finances.
Exactly, and I think cutting close now with the blog itself that you've written is what it is this in the header minimalism in Filipinx culture is how do we kind of bring about creating this mindset that we need to not be so kind of we need to stop trying to add value in things that doesn't matter and actually add value on the things that do matter to us, which is those moments that are those having those moments that we can never replace.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because in our culture, we love to have parties and we love to be together and really build our community with our neighbors and our relatives. It's like when you already have that, when you're already surrounded with so much love, you don't really need anything else. Like, okay, you might need like a car to get from home to work or maybe from home to the grocery store. Yeah, maybe it'll be nice to treat yourself to that handbag that you've wanted for a couple months and you have the cash for it. But it's when you go in excess of that, like really reaching to without really having the intention of like sitting and thinking about, is this what I really want? That's kind of where, your spending habits or like your need, what you perceive as needs become questionable.
Definitely, and it's those like moments that when it comes to really ingraining it in our culture is that we have to like I like how you mentioned here in the blog. While there is only so much about minimalism that you can evangelize in a post, is to live out these minimalistic practices, and for you as you are always living out having this minimalistic practice, like what are some tips that you would like to share out there?
Yeah, this is actually something that I was thinking about before jumping on, but you know how one of the stereotypes of being a Filipino is that it's very likely that we're Christian or Catholic.
Yes.
So practicing minimalism is kind of like practicing a religion. Like there are a set of principles that could make you this perfect Christian or this perfect Catholic, and the same idea applies to minimalism. Like yes, when you're a minimalist, that means you only have essentials. That means this. That means that. But it really comes down to the person. Like no one's perfect. So as someone who like calls myself a minimalist, like my bed's a mess right now. I still have like more plants than I actually can handle taking care of. I have books on the shelf that I haven't touched in years, but still, plan to read it. But it's really that sense of intentionality, and not only like intentionality of like knowing what I actually want to bring into my home, opposed to like just buying things on a whim and allowing it to collect dust on the shelves later on. So I think that's what minimalism really comes down to, is intentionality, because it's not about like how much stuff you have. It's like really the quality of whatever item that you bring into your home and how much that brings value to you. So for example, there's this chair that I'm sitting on. The camera's reversed, so it's really throwing me off. But there's this chair that I'm sitting on, and I recently got it. It's something that I've been eyeing out at a local furniture store for almost a month. I remember when I first saw it, I thought to myself, I need to have that. But instead of running into the store and saying like, I'm gonna buy that, thank you very much, and walking out with the chair, I went home. I thought about like, why do I want this chair? How much value is it going to bring to me? Am I actually going to sit on it, or is it just going to be another piece of decoration so that it looks like other bedrooms that I see on Instagram or on Reddit? So, and then and even after that, it took me a month to decide like, yeah, I actually want this chair. I'm actually going to go out and buy it.
You bring up another great point, and also because I remember in the film itself, and like tying it into the film, is that I think he was giving a box, and he had to pack up all the stuff and label all the things that he needed and not needed, and then like he only picked out one box, and that one box just is what he needed to just survive. And I'm just like, that kind of is like a really great practice to do, is because it's just like you're eliminating and you're prioritizing what really matters, and the thing that doesn't matter in the boxes, you can just give it away to friends or family, or have a garage sale. And that's just like a really nice way to tie it in. And I like that you had that example of the chair. It's just like, what is the intention behind this chair? Like, what's its purpose? Similar
Exactly.
to our life, like what's our purpose? So it seems similar as an item.
Yeah, and by having this sense of intention with everything that you put your hands on, it kind of allows you to build a relationship with things, because generally in American culture, we're very like, we have fast fashion, like clothes that are pretty much meant to be thrown away after 1 to 2 uses because it's no good after that. Like, it doesn't look good. Like, we have this throwaway type of culture. We have this mass consumption type of culture. And it's really, society doesn't make it very easy to be intentional about how we spend our money and the types of things that we bring back home. So by actually considering minimalism as like a more spiritual practice rather than like an aesthetic practice, you're allowing yourself to clear your space so that you can clear your mind and generally be happier with the space that you're living in.
And one thing that I'd like to add on with that is that mindfulness and intentionality is really part of creating such a great physical, spiritual, and financial wellness, which I wanted to coach you on. That's kind of like the biggest thing.
Yeah. I first discovered minimalism about 3 or 4 years ago when I was trying to look for YouTube videos on how to pay off student loan debt. And then I came across Matt D'Avella's, like the director of the Minimalism Film, Matt D'Avella's YouTube video on how he paid $90,000 in student loan debt by living at home with his parents. And during that time of living at home with his parents was when he found minimalism. And so it's really beautiful to be able to learn from these different types of voices and see how like minimalism actually plays in different people's lives. Because when people hear that word, they kind of cringe and they're like, "Oh, I can never do that." But it's never like one thing. Like going back to the religion analogy, like not every single Christian is the same, and not one Christian is always going to be better than the other.
I would like to like I like that. I like that you mentioned that. And it's like this when I remember when I went back home to the Philippines for vacation, or not even vacation, but just to help accompany my grandmother, is that when I was there, I was stranded in our grandparents' home. I had to really like live without having so much stuff. Like there's no internet, so per connection, one first of all, and then all I had was just um, and I feel like I took it for granted because I really wanted. I miss what I had, but it made me really think about like, oh, like this is what it really means to be happy. It's just like to just what you have like with your like relatives and your family, and like even like talk stories with the people next to you because the houses were next door. That's what it means to be like happy. Like this is what it like even like what you said, like people cringe when they hear minimalist because it's like I can never do that. Like how do people live those like not having so much stuff, but in actuality like that's where the joy is. And I feel like
Yeah.
people and bringing back to our cultures that we see this in our Filipino community, like they want to rise from poverty, but at the same time, and people kind of glamorize like the lifestyle of like having a lot of money, but at the same time, things change when you have a lot of money because you don't know what you will do with it. So at the same time, it just comes in the sense of moderation and being able to really like live out like what you really need. And it's just setting those boundaries, setting those example of intentionality, and really like clearing out like what we really need in life. I think I blabbered on.
Oh no, I think everything that you said was perfect. I really appreciated that you brought up your experience of going back to the Philippines and recognizing the difference of having an abundance of stuff compared to like you personally have that experience of knowing what it's like to have nothing just by visiting back like visiting the Philippines. And my and you know there's definitely a spectrum of like lifestyles. There could be like there are two extremes, like one of having way too much and one of having way too little. And we're in a very privileged spot where we have the option to have as much as we want or to have as little as we want. We're not forced to live in poverty and not we're not forced to starve. We don't have to have like the very bare minimum essentials. We're allowed to bring in whatever we want into our lives. But there's also a balance that you need to recognize. Like, yes, there are people out there who are living extravagantly, unnecessarily. There are also people out there who just simply don't have enough because that's just what their circumstances is. But when we're in a place of privilege of where we those aren't really things that we have to worry about, it's kind of our choice to decide like, okay, how am I going to allow what society is telling me to like how am I going to live out my life based on that? I don't really know where I'm going with this topic, but yeah, I don't know where I'm going. Oh wait, I think you're on mute.
I think no, same. I think where I was going with this is I kept on referring back to the concept of little did all they know is the American dream was a facade, and that the life of the lacking of
Oh yeah.
would take the generations transfer to independence. Like it's this
Mhm.
I think the concept of even the American dream or this concept of model minority that I was trying to really tie it in with that, and it's
Yeah.
really how can we change this? Like because there is no such thing as an American dream. I think an American dream is just an illusion of what are what they wanted to really live on for us.
Yeah, definitely. When I wrote that sentence, I was thinking a lot about how much my family has developed socioeconomically. So it wasn't until two generation no, it wasn't up until my parents' generation where my family has kind of became they had enough money. So I remember my mom telling me stories about how poor her parents, like my grandparents, were growing up and how much they struggled. Like they were forced under the condition to live with their parents. So my grandma's mom, like they had to live with their parents and raise their children in that home. And it wasn't really a choice for them to be able to have their own space. And then coming down to my mom's generation, like we still grew up really poor, but my mom made enough money to have her own space and not having to live with my grandparents. Yeah, my mom might have missed like a couple bills a few times a month, but like we still had our own space. And like now coming down to my generation, I'm in a position where I can actually live comfortably and pay my bills on time and like not really have to worry. But because I've discovered minimalism, I never really fell into that trap of like, oh, I have like an excess of money, so I can just buy whatever I want until my money's gone. And like my one of my like my aunties are that way where she was in that generation where they kind of finally found their footing financially, but it's like, okay, I have like a lot of money, what I do with it, I'm just going to go spend it. So I think growing up and seeing that practice, it was kind of what scared me into minimalism, because going into relatives' homes or even into my grandpa's home from my dad's side is like it was all so cluttered and it was all so stressful to just kind of be in that space where like I didn't really want that for myself. So I wanted to figure out a way to like not have to live like that and like not having like five more TVs in the house than I needed. Just really being intentional about like how many things I have, like why I need that many.
Thank you for sharing. And before we kind of wrap things up, is there was one question from our team that wanted to ask these questions to you, and I will post it on the question. So
Okay.
one of our strategists asked, what to do if someone gives you a gift that you don't need?
I hadn't really, as a minimalist, I hadn't really figured myself out about gifts. Um, I can use an example in my life. Back in high school or early high school when everyone was still obsessed with One Direction, my brother bought me a One Direction t-shirt from Hot Topic and it didn't fit me right, so I never wore it. And when it was time for me to like move out to go to college, that's kind of when I decided like, hey, I never wore this. I don't really need it, but it was a gift. Like there's a type of sentiment to it. But I'm not obligated to like keep it. There's definitely, and I don't mean to sound like mean by saying that, but receiving a gift, it's really important that you acknowledge like, thank you so much for thinking of me. I really appreciate that. And like, just gratitude. But you also have the responsibility of figuring out how that gift is going to bring value to your life. So for some people, they feel obligated to keep it because it was a gift, but if it doesn't fit into your life, then you don't have to keep it in your life. You can always re-gift it. You can always donate it to someone who actually needed that thing. It's like a gift is a gift, and it's your choice to do whatever you want with it.
I think exactly what you said, and I feel like if for anyone that who do, because I think we all had experiences where we got a gift and we're just like, oh, I don't need this, but thank you for just acknowledging, like, oh, thank you for taking the time for buying it. But at the same time, I feel like someone else would be fortunate enough of having this, and then we kind of like go into the cycle, like, what if it's your Filipino auntie that gave you a really nice sweater, and then you're just like, oh, I already have too much, I don't know what to do with this. And you kind of go into this pattern of like, I don't want to hurt their feelings, so I have to keep
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I think you can also receive a gift that you don't necessarily need but really want to keep. And in that situation, with the example of a sweater, like if my auntie gave me a really beautiful sweater that I know for sure that I want to keep and wear all the time, then I would probably find something else in my closet to switch it out. Like maybe I'll find another sweater that I haven't worn in a while. So it's like, okay, this one doesn't really bring value to me anymore. So we can like switch it out.
Exactly. And I think even the last one is two of the most important questions that we need to ask ourselves is, do I need this, and why do I have this? And like asking those two questions will kind of help us really create that sense of intentionality when we're trying to really evaluate our not only our lives but what we do or what we have.
Yeah. And like before we end this stream, I think one thing that's really, really, really important to know about minimalism that I don't think was stressed enough was that whatever you bring into your life doesn't always have to be what is essential. Like if it's gonna make you happier in any way, and if it's going to bring you a convenience that you can afford and will actually use all the time, then why not have it? Because value is not simplified to what you need, but value is also like how it makes you feel. So like the example of this chair, I didn't need it. I have a couch in the living room that I can sit on, but it's a chair that I actually sit in every day, and it's a chair that I enjoy. So I think it's certainly something that's worth keeping in my life, even though I could 100% live without it.
I think that was a really perfect way to like wrap things up and really like quote that. I was trying to write it, but then at the same time it was really meaningful that I was like, I'll just listen. But I really like what you just said. If you can write it on the, I think, comment, and then I can highlight it.
Okay, I'll try to paraphrase. I'll try to remember what I said.
But it was really I love that. It's a really beautiful way to end it, and I think for anyone that will be listening to the recorded live stream of this, I just want maybe to end off is like, what is 3 things that you want to leave them by, if that is okay.
3 things? Okay. So the first one, once again, stressing that minimalism is not about cutting back down to your absolute essentials, but it's more about bringing things into your life that you will actually value and actually use day to day. Secondly, by practicing minimalism, it's going to save you so much money. Being able to, cultivating this practice is an ongoing process. I'm not a perfect minimalist. Sometimes I make mistakes and I buy things on a whim. But over the past few years, I've learned how to buy less clothes. I've learned how to buy things that have multiple purposes rather than like a single purpose. And now I know what are material things that will actually bring value to me and will not just sit in the corner of the room and collect dust. And the last point I'll make is, feel free to explore. Don't be afraid to make mistakes and really look up to people that you can relate to. Like my favorite minimalist is Matt Diavella on YouTube. He has great content and he's able to make relatable content that makes us feel better about ourselves for wanting to for like even just being interested in minimalism.
I think you froze on your end.
Oh no, can you hear me? Oh no. I can hear you, Chachi. I don't know if you can hear me.
Wait, I think you froze. Hold on, I just froze on the screen. Okay, I don't know what happened, but for some reason, you were like frozen, and then it kind of ended right there. So I don't know if it caught the last thing you said, but hopefully it did. And
Okay, are you saying to me now?
my follow-up question was, who is your role model? Yes.
Okay. Okay, who is my role model?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna say his name again. My role model is probably Matt Diavella, and I am also obligated to say that my role model is also Dwayne The Rock Johnson. For no reason. I just really look up to those two people. Yeah.
And with that said, thank you for being in our IGLive StreamYard series of the Filipino minimalist and writing content for us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I would just like to emphasize again that this conversation that we had about minimalism within our culture, really the conversation that we had is very meaningful.
Yeah, I agree.
And for anyone, and also for anyone out there, if you think that this should be a series on our page, let us know, and I will let Jess know at Morning Coffee Money, and we can do this as an annual thing. Also, feel free to check her Instagram and ways that you can also help yourself financially, especially during these times.
Yes.
And Rebecca, if you have any last words?
Take care, everyone. Stay safe and try to laugh at least once a day.